YouTube recording, and this is where we left off from the previous session. We actually did crash as well because this cache, I had it set too big, so my memory filled up, and I think if your cache gets too big, the Houdini session will just like, boom, it's just gone. So I'm just gonna turn this one down a little bit, like the default I think is 5,000, but that's maybe a little bit too small, so I'll just go up to 64,000. And if you are caching things to disk, sometimes turning this checkbox off can speed up the process of caching to disk, because you're just saving to the hard drive instead of like your memory and the hard drive. So that's pretty helpful. Raven 2201. Thank you for the tier 1. So that's a helpful thing if you're going to dump things to disk. Another thing as well, if we look at it down here, we have all these extra attributes. I'm just going to advance to a frame here later on. Spin zone. Yeah, of course, happy to share the info. Hopefully it's helpful and not too redundant. So I'm just advancing to a frame here. Let me turn the cache back on while I explain some of this stuff. But basically, I'm just going to set this up so we can save our simulation to disk, that we can render lookdev on it without worrying about simulating stuff. So I'll advance to a later frame here when we actually have some particles to look at in our spreadsheet. And the first thing you always want to do when you're saving particles or just any geometry to disk is get rid of extra attributes you're not using. Like all that stuff can take up a lot of space in memory. So try to only keep what you need. So if we look at down here, you can see this is saying 306 megabytes because we have all these extra attributes. We also have 3 million particles, but the extra attributes bloat your file quite a bit. So I'm going to set this up with the attribute rename. Someone was asking about that recently. I just use this because I'm used to it. It's been around longer. I think we don't need those detail attributes as well. So I'm used to it like that. I think they have the attribute delete that's a newer one, but I just never got used to using this one. I think I can set it up just like that, and it's kind of doing the same thing. But yeah, basically the one thing I was saying was anytime you have a digital asset, so this is actually just has this attribute inside of it, and to find the accurate time it's taking to perform this operation, you can middle mouse here and see it's like 2.9 milliseconds. But here this 0.003 is not really accurate. It doesn't accumulate like all of the cook time of all the nodes inside for HDAs. So if there's an opportunity, I'd prefer to use non-HDA nodes, like if it's two things that are exactly the same, but obviously you can't do that for every situation. So we'll just say attribute cleanse. Take our attributes to the spa, give them a nice refreshing. There is a few things I think I'm gonna want. So I'm gonna want to keep the age. We were using that down here. Andre, thank you for the 12 months. Let's go. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't use the performance monitor a ton. I think the performance monitor can do a better job accumulating everything that's happening inside of it. I usually just prefer, if I can, like middle mouse button clicking, and it's usually just more cumbersome, too cumbersome to do a performance monitor. But if you're making like a setup that you know a lot of people will use, or you're going to reuse a ton of times, then going into the performance monitor and double checking and like analyzing things can be more worthwhile. So we want the age for sure. And then I'm also just going to add a rest position to the emitter. So this is going to keep a copy of the position that the particles were emitted from. And this could be useful for doing some extra effects and stuff like that, either displacements or coloring or things like that. I'll just get rid of the other sphere we were using before that wasn't that good. And if we want, we can get rid of this group just to keep things extra organized. Sometimes if you have extra groups, it just is confusing. If you look at it later, you don't know why it's there or something. So that's cool. Gormor, hello in Ukraine. Hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're in the western portion of it and far from any conflicts. Oh my God, Raphael, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. What kind of stuff were you streaming? So I'm just getting ready here, Raiders. We're going through this effect, and I did a particle simulation last week, and we're gonna cache stuff to disk right now. I'll just set that up so I can have it going in the background while I'm explaining. I'm actually just gonna call this, I had a name here that I was gonna use, boom, and everything else is fine. So I render the frame range and just save the scene, and then I can save to disk in background. So that's cooking. If you want to see it, you can go to the render scheduler, I think. Hopefully I didn't, oh, here it is. All right. So we'll just go to the render scheduler, and we can see it. This was like an earlier one I did, but there it is. Artistas y personas varias. I don't know what that power Houdini. So we're clicking, yeah, we're getting that going. And I'm just going to bring in a file and we can start previewing that. But yeah, welcome to all the raiders. Thanks again for the raid. Every kind of people. Oh, okay, I'm used to this must be Spanish. I was used to Pessoas for. So this is what we're working on. We have a simulation we're cooking out here today. I'm just going to link up the path and you can take a look. So it's already cached some frames. I have a quick camera I set up. Power Houdini. Power up Houdini. It's like you do a Power Rangers. Go, go, Houdini. So if you guys want to grab where I am here, you can use this link to the Houdini scene file. This is where I am right now. It should be an exact copy. And you could cache things on your end if you want to follow along as well. So yeah, this is cooking. It's already like 36%. And we can start to talk maybe a little bit about what we can do with these attributes. Yeah, I think I'm planning to render with Redshift. Just go over this stuff real quick. So just do the attribute VOP. And we have the age. That's the time in seconds that the particles have been alive. So if you subtract time from age, you can do, maybe this is going to be easier to visualize. This is the time in seconds now that the particle was emitted at. So you can kind of recreate like a birth time attribute from, you only need an age and you just need the same like scene time or whatever. So that's pretty cool. This is just starting at 0 and then it's just incrementing like a time in seconds for when the particle was created or when it was born. And then if I do this vector to vector 4, instead of position, if we just look at this here with a, just use a regular anti-alias noise. So if we just look at position here, this is like classic swimming texture. The texture is just staying in place, but the particles are swimming or moving through it. But that was why I assigned the rest position to the emitter. So the particles inherit all of the attributes from the emitter, and I preserved this. Should have preserved. Oh no, I didn't do it. God damn it. All right. So I have it now. We'll recache our simulation. And that rest can be somewhat important depending on what you want to do. So we should see it pop up here in a few seconds on our actual stuff we're reading in. So the ID, so there's kind of a hack you can do, or I'm doing, which is if your Houdini session doesn't freeze. Did I lose something? Sorry about that. I think maybe I'll just reopen it. Let's just get rid of all these. I don't know what happened, but I just saved it in background, so the scene file will be good to go. So yeah, if you're not deleting any particles and you're just adding particles, you can just use the point number as an ID, because it's not going to change as long as you're not removing or deleting particles during the simulation. So that was definitely something I thought about, but decided you just save a little bit of space or whatever that way if you're setting things up like that. So I can just make sure, it looks like these are still saving to disk. And yeah, these are updating now, but you can see we have the rest position and it's sticking. The particles that's attribute is staying with the particles basically. Yeah, no worries. I mean, people will usually just save ID anyways to be like overly cautious, but I'm kind of just doing optimization or trick or hack or whatever. But yeah, if we do like random ID and just visualize, we can get a color from it. Oh, I'm sorry, point number. We didn't do an ID. These would be actual consistent values. We could go back to that and just do a compare filter. We could just get a few of them. And these could be the glitters. And this number will be consistent because Yeah, I think even for a retime, you can still do it based off the point number. As long as you're not deleting particles. That's like the only gotcha. But yeah, we don't need to worry about that. I could just test this and set like a speed of 0.25. You might want to do maybe some of these. We probably don't need that special interpolation. But this stuff will be able to retime properly as well, even with just PT num. It's kind of like if you have a character that's animated that's not, the topology on it isn't changing, you can retime that. So with the particles, you can do a similar thing that's able to figure out what's going on. Old school Jack, good to see you again. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm back at it again. Yeah, I think this is really slow motion or whatever, but you should be able to see it's doing all of that. I don't know if we need to turn that. I think I just turned it way too low. Yeah, so with flip simulations, there's the reseeding, or there's certain things happening that can a little bit of a different circumstance to be in, but all of this stuff, you should be in good shape. Just keeping PT num is like, if you're doing sparks, sometimes people will do this technique where you just delete your sparks after you do all of your retiming and you do all of your fancy stuff, and then you don't have to worry about ID and you don't have to worry about some of that stuff or whatever. We could do a quick test. Let's finish setting some of this stuff up. But yeah, we're just making sure our attributes work, and we can use so basically our rest position isn't changing, it's just static, so we're kind of just smearing it. But if we use the birth time as an additional vector component, Old School Jack, thank you for the 5 months. So if you offset time by the birth time, then you'll get like a proper 3-dimensional texture or whatever, one that isn't just like streaked over time. So we can adjust just the frequency of the birth time to kind of like expand or contract the effect, and then we can also adjust the frequency of the rest position to get like different kind of texture coordinates or whatever. If you go really low frequency, you get like a smooth smeared thing. You do higher, and you can get something like that that's changing more over the duration of the simulation. Yeah, it's a pretty helpful technique. And then sometimes with these noises, if you go into 3D noise, this can be a little bit more useful for effects. You can even just do a texture and use this noise value as your UV coordinates. So right now it's just getting the default mandrel picture or whatever. You just get some cosmic colors or something like that. I mean, you can use these as kind of like a color ramp, and it might be helpful. It can be a little bit of a shame because it's not like it's not as procedural. You can't use the ramp with it or whatever. Let's see if it works. Looks like this file path is a little bit too difficult for Houdini to parse through. Let's try this one. So that one works. So yeah, then you can just pull from different parts of the image like this, and sometimes you get some interesting results this way. You can try different offsets and stuff like that and get some somewhat procedural color schemes. If you're lazy, it's kind of cool because you can just grab images that you like the colors of and just pull it from there and do that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, you could rebuild ID in a lot of cases, but generally, if it's best if you don't have to. Like, if you're going to be needing ID, it's best to just keep it in the first place. And I'm just going to switch this here to a ramp parameter. And we could go, let me just do the fit range here. I'm going to switch this back to a one-dimensional KZ LCR. Thank you for the prime. And we can just adjust the range from like negative 0.45 to positive 0.45. And you can use some of these maybe the Houdini comes with, and then that's a little bit more flexible because it's kind of like using the images as a starting thing, but then you have more art direction or more power to shift values around and sculpt things around or whatever. Let's do something like this. Yeah, the rest plus life vector 4 it's definitely really nice for any magical type of effects or things like that, because you have just so much control. After the simulation, you can like get a lot of interesting looks and stuff like that out of it. So they're not doing a ton of color variation, but maybe there's a little bit, some green back there, some red up here or something like that. I don't think there's as much purple as this ramp has. And I don't think there's as much pink stuff happening here. I think overall it's more warm or whatever. Let's just get rid of that green. We'll just go maybe to a gray or something like that. This blue, just a nice like space blue or space gray or whatever. All right. Something like that could be interesting. So yeah, we're gonna test out the retime, and yeah, I can just use this output frame range maybe. We can use this to shift I think we should be able to use it to shift to a different portion of the simulation. Maybe I'm not setting it up right. You can create any ramp from image. Yeah, that's somewhat useful. I think sometimes I'll get too many keys from that. But it's definitely, I've definitely had some color space issues and things with it sometimes. But I definitely like some of those ramp tricks and stuff like that they have. Like you should be able to control middle mouse or something on these. And you can sample like even, should be sampling like Chatterino colors or something. But yeah, it's, I don't know, I used to use it more, but I found it to be a little bit frustrating. Sometimes it doesn't do the best like color management or whatever. Alright. So yeah, I think just with this time blend, I'm just gonna go back here. I think I need to enable other things, so I'm just gonna do a time shift afterwards and use this. Yeah, so that wasn't my render. I haven't done a render yet. This is just our reference from the Foundation Apple TV show or whatever. So we're going to be getting into the render lighting stuff shortly. All right, so we can do by frame, and I'm just going to add some number to this to get ourselves forward, fast forward into the simulation. I think we need to turn off some of this. And then I was just fast forwarding too long. Alright, that should be pretty slow. 25%. You go to like a fifth of the total time speed. And then we'll just do this as a flipbook. If you guys want to get caught up, you can do another scene file update or whatever from, get that link in the chat. And I'll start the flipbook here. So I'm just going to double check here that things look how we expect them to look in motion. We want to just double check and make sure that the time blend is working without an ID attribute. It looks like it is. Player 2, welcome back. Good to see you again. Thank you for the 22 months. OG. So we just want to make sure that the attributes are sticking, the noises are sticking properly or whatever. And the retime is smooth. So we're in good shape with all that. I don't know if we need to keep, we'll just keep this going. And we could maybe do a quick comparison here. So I think they definitely did a little bit better of a job with the 2 dual speed type of stuff. I don't know. Just trying it backwards and flipping it and stuff like that. But yeah, the general motion and stuff is kind of similar. I don't know, just timing, we still need to go slower, I'm thinking. So I'll just jump in here. We'll do a quick change. And we'll go just half of what we were playing the speed at, and then we'll just update our shift We can start at frame 880. So that should be good. I'll just turn off colors for right now, and we'll start setting up our lighting and rendering and stuff like that with Redshift. So I'm gonna turn this sphere into a polygonal mesh or whatever that will let Redshift actually render it. Redshift won't work with the standard like Houdini primitive type. It needs like actual mesh. We'll make our shading network, do a material builder. This will be, just call it the orb. And this, we'll call it particles. So the orb, you can assign these like that. And the orb, I think we can just do 0, and I don't know, maybe just leave it like this for right now, and see what we get. And the particles, I'm gonna increase the roughness so they're not like perfectly mirror shape or whatever, and we should be okay with that. We could just save just in case Redshift decides to crash, and let's just name these. Just keep ourselves organized. And then this light, I don't need it anymore. I was just using that to visualize the simulation. So under geometry here, I was using the lit spheres, and I was just had a light on top, but it's not a Redshift light, so we don't need it anymore. And I don't think I had the Redshift plugin installed when I was going through this, so if you need to add them, the parameters, you can do add camera parameters. If you have the Redshift plugin enabled, it will create these as you make the nodes, but otherwise you might need to do this Redshift object. Particle fluid surface. Yeah, you can do some stuff with that. Sometimes I'll just use the VDB from particles, and you can get some interesting masks and stuff that way. Let's just finish getting these parameters. Do particles here. We'll just make the scale a little bit smaller. So yeah, if you do VDB from particles, this is a little bit maybe quicker way of doing the particle fluid surface. I think it's maybe just a little bit more optimized. There's less like overhead to running the node. And you would maybe start to do like analysis, get the gradient, and get the attribute from that volume. From the volume. And then this would almost be like a surface normal. If you look at the Y, you kind of have like a facing ratio. Joao, good to see you again. Yes, I'm back. Thank you for the 21 months. So you can kind of do a facing ratio, or you can do some fake lighting maybe from this kind of stuff. You can also do an analysis maybe on the curvature, and you can get some, might want to blur that. And we'll just remap the color here. Studio Not War. Good to see you. Thank you for the 18 months. Taxes. You're doing the taxes? Alright, so just do ramp. From edge, you can actually just remap color itself like that. maybe we want to smooth the SDF. Hopefully you get money back, you don't have to pay. So you could get some interesting looks doing this kind of stuff as well. So not only do you have a surface that you can convert and render as a mesh, but you have these attributes that you can kind of pull out or glean from that volume or the VDB that can be kind of handy as well. Definitely for magical energy effects and stuff like that, this type of stuff can be useful as well. So I think I wasn't looking at the retime, so it was a little confusing. But yeah, you can get some very good like energy vortex type of stuff that way. And then these surface normals can be somewhat helpful as well. You can do some interesting things with them for sure. We'll just go back to our time shift. And I think we're good to render. We'll just add a Redshift light. Save. Get our render view. I'm going to switch the light to a sphere. Let's just see what we start getting with a render here. Look at that. Final. Done. I think I'm dropping some frames because I just have one GPU right now, but hopefully it's not too bad. The audio should still be pretty good. But yeah, it's already looking good. I think we definitely want the light source to be there behind the sphere. I got the beer. I got the super Bach, super power. So yeah, so you get some interesting occlusion and stuff from the particles in the foreground, and maybe just shift the light back in Y a little bit. I think you don't really want it in the front of too many of the particles, otherwise it just kind of will flatten everything out. Yes, I am in Portugal, so I'm drinking a beer at non-scumbag hours, at regular person hours. Yeah, maybe we'll add this warmth into our light a little bit. Their reference definitely seems pretty orange, pretty red, so we'll do something like that for right now. Just make sure. Yes, I'm in Portugal. I'm in Lisbon. Wait, you were in Portugal as well, right? So I'm just gonna make it smaller there. Maybe we want it to be brighter. And something like this could be interesting. I don't know how to surf. Oh no, just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, let me know if you're in Lisbon. I don't have any plans to go to Porto, but it's definitely on my list of places I want to go see while I'm here. So I think putting the light forward a little bit instead of completely backwards behind everything. Yeah, feel free to DM or whisper, Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram, any service. So this is feeling pretty good where it is positioned there. I think we're getting some good detail and stuff. So this is going to be our main, I don't know what we want to call it, maybe the orb light. I'm just going to hold Alt and make a copy of this, and maybe this will be like an ambient fill, something like that. We can move this one over in X, slide it over there, maybe up and forward or something. So we can have something happening over on the left side of the screen. And then this one, maybe we'll cool it off. And it's way too bright. So just, I don't know, like a hint of purple or blue or some coolish colors or something like that. So that's one ambient fill, and we can maybe just add another one that's on the other side, and maybe move that one down. Got Italy, we got some serious the pigs are here. Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain. The mighty pigs are rising up. And this one I'm just going to make it bluer, something like that. So you just have some hue variation happening across the image or something. We might have too many particles. I feel like when I simulate this kind of stuff, you almost want more particles than you need, and then you can delete some if you have too many. Let's just turn off the visibility of that, and then we'll crank the intensity. They have something like that. Do you work for a studio in Portugal, work remotely? Yeah, I'm working remotely for a studio in California now, so my hours are a little shifted, but I usually will still start at like 10 a.m. Western European time or whatever, and it's like 8 hours ahead of Pacific time, so you have some overlap. Basically, my 8 p.m. is their noon or their lunchtime or whatever. Baltic Sea. Still winter up there. I feel like this last week in Portugal is kind of the first week of summer, almost. It's definitely got a lot hotter. What are we dealing with here? Pretty warm. Still getting cold at night and everything like that, but it's been cool. So we'll start to add some of these photographic effects that they have. If we go to our camera, depth of field, pop that bad boy on, and we'll try to dial in a focal plane, kind of like they do. That portion there is like sharp or whatever. I'm gonna go with this widescreen, like anamorphic aspect ratio. If you look at their bokeh to get these oval shape things stretched like that, you can just reduce the aspect. I'm gonna do maybe the shutter blades, and then we'll reduce the f-stop, and then we just need to shift the focus distance to be closer to where the orb where the sphere is. Maybe let me just make sure that this, I'm just gonna turn this visibility of that light off as well. So I think our f-stop is too shallow or whatever. All right, so something like that should be okay. I don't have any reflectivity or like specular stuff going on too much right now. Basically, we're just rendering the particles as spheres, and we're not going to be able to get that good of specular highlights or whatever. It's mainly like a diffuse element or whatever that we're getting here. I think I might go into my Redshift render settings, and I'm gonna just disable GI, I think, for this kind of stuff happening in outer space or like more magical fantasy. Like, if you just turn it off, your render can be faster, and you can even get some more interesting like contrast or stuff happening like that. So we'll turn it off. I'm gonna move. Turn that visibility off. I'm just gonna move these lights maybe a little bit closer in and brighter. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I kind of slightly rethinking my decision with that GI. It seems like maybe it's getting a little too muddy. I might want to turn that back on, but let me just see some stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to turn the GI back on. I think I was helping out. It gives you maybe more of a gaseous kind of cloudy look or whatever. I think my particles right now, maybe I have too many. So this is basically what I do here for particle reduction. You just say if a random number from the point number is less than your parameter, your slider, call it delete, remove the point. So this way you just have like a percentage. You could delete 90%, 93%. I'll start maybe delete like 75% of them. And make the scale bigger. Let's just see what we get with that. So I think the particles they have here are definitely, like, you can see more individual aspects of them and stuff. We could always do something with our other particles, like make a fog out of them or something, but I think for right now I just want this stuff to be bigger. Might be a little too big. Try that. maybe delete a little bit more of them. All right. Something like this could be pretty interesting. So we'll leave that where it is. And then I'm just gonna try setting up some instances. We were talking a little bit about that on the Discord, I think. Something very serious is happening out here. I don't think it's too serious. I think it's just, I'm in a pretty crowded area of Lisbon, so there's just definitely a lot of traffic and stuff happening. So yeah, I think these little shapes here we're getting, they're definitely feeling like the same approximate size. One thing I might want to do here is just, let's switch this expression and we'll just make a group called delete and set it equal to 1 if that condition is true. So if we take this group, pop it in our output selection, you can see it looks like most of the points are selected there, which should be true because we're doing like 85%. Then we can split the stream. Like that. So this way we're still able maybe to do something with these other particles here that we were originally deleting. Maybe now I just do a copy of this routine, and this time we'll do like 98.5, and we'll do another split. Could have been too many. I think I need to reseed my random function. Should work. Okay, pasa. we definitely have the pigs representation happening in the chat. Some Iberian power happening right here. So for whatever reason, this is selecting so I just need to reset my group, because it's basically, it already had the previous value or setting from before. Yeah, so I'm doing this D7 visa track thing or whatever. I think it's basically like it should be ideal mostly for freelance contract people, like if you're working remotely for studios that aren't in Lisbon or Portugal, you can, this D7 visa scheme will still work for it, but you can use it to like travel around Shenzhen, the Eurozone. So if you want to work like on site for a company in a different part of the EU, you can do that. So it seems pretty flexible. Italian is somewhat close. There's some overlap with Portugal or Portuguese. You'd still say ciao in Portugal. But I feel like everywhere in the EU they say ciao though. So yeah, we're just gonna change our amount here. And these, we're gonna save these, and they'll be maybe the glittering particles or the sparkling ones. So we'll get, I don't know, maybe even that, something like that. And we can do a random attribute here that's going to be the orientation. So we'll call it orient. Go over here to direction or orientation, and we want to make sure this is for components for quaternion. Spain, yeah, I think in Portugal it's the same way. You can only use it for goodbye. You can't, but in Italy you could say ciao for hello or anything like that. So this is going to be our orientation. We can visualize it. That's always helpful. Copy. And if you use the file node, you get this cube, but you can switch from default to def axis, and then you get a little gnomon orientation thing. No AC. I don't mind it too much. I mean, I like having the windows open in a breeze. But yeah, I think in where I was in San Francisco before I moved, I didn't have AC. There's a similar Mediterranean climate here or whatever, but I think the no heat might be harder for me to get used to where I am right now. Definitely not in the summer coming up, but when I first got out here, it was pretty cold, like a month ago or whatever. So we can pack this vegan nuts. There he is, the reigning champ, showing his supreme peace last week. I still can't get over that, all those, just the like art direction and style for it overall was a very like cohesive, very good vision. If you guys didn't see it, you could go into the Discord and I think you put it in finished work. Yeah, here it is. This is Vegan Nuts' amazing piece he just finished. In Brazil we say ciao, it's our translation. Yeah, I think the Portuguese is a similar thing that where they might spell it the same, but they definitely only use it for goodbyes. So we have these random orientations, but they're just going to stick. They're not going to change over time. Yeah, so I'm using the quaternion for a little bit of a specific reason. So there's a special vex function you can use that's this q rotate. Can I make this help bigger? I don't think it makes the help that much bigger. Or maybe it's not q rotate. I think so. Quaternions and matrices and that kind of stuff are a little bit easier to work with than vectors, I think. So if I do a matrix 3 here, call it rotate, not like that, but like this, and set it to the identity transform or whatever, I can make a rotation on that matrix. I think you can just use pi maybe, and we'll rotate along a random vector. And instead of just the random like that, I think you want to use like sample sphere uniform. And you can use this random to seed your sampler. So this is going to give us a random axis. And then you can just multiply your orient quaternion by the rotation, I think. Boom. So that's doing your random rotations, but we can do, instead of just pi, we can multiply that by the time, and then we should get spinning over random axes over time. Using Houdini 3 to 4 months after 28 years using everything else. Yeah, I think Vex is, depending on your background, like I was new processing or some action script and stuff like that, and the Vex wasn't as robust when I was picking up Houdini, but definitely that aspect of it was something I gravitated for. Pretty, is definitely one of the more powerful aspects. So if I just do a grid here, this is going to be quicker to visualize this stuff. So we have a grid, we have our guys that are spinning around random directions. Yeah, I mean the quaternion, as long as you know what you're doing, you don't really need to get in, and you can view it as more of like an abstract object or like a data type or whatever. I think I might just want to switch this maybe though. So I'm going to switch my matrix to a quaternion and then multiply. That doesn't look right. Zach, good to see you. So that's one thing you can do. There's this that's this isn't, I don't know if this is the sanction approved version, but if you do the slurp like that, that's another way to spin things. Okay, so yeah, that's another thing you can do. Thank you, Gurad. Just comment that out. I think, yeah, I remember doing things like this before as well. So this is a quaternion that we want it to be our output, but we want to Q convert to a matrix, and then we can do our transform with matrices, and then the result, wrap that bad boy up, and we can add our time back in here. Ooh. Ooh. I don't know, did I do it right? Oh, I see what you're saying. So instead of starting with this, we want rot to be Q convert. Like that. Then we're converting, and then we can just go back at the end here, like that. I don't know. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna keep my I'm just gonna stay with the slurp. I don't know. Well, I'm just gonna leave it like that. And then if you want to change the spinning speed, you can multiply it by a random number, again based off of the point number. This is going to be the last bit of Xcode. ptnum minus just a random offset. I typed in the same one by mistake. And we'll just go with a range of like slower to faster. So there it is. I don't know. I didn't do so. I mangled it, but there it is. So this is going to be our instances. I'll just make a null here. These are going to be out sparkles like that. We want to keep rendering over here from the main particles, just the big cloud of them. And up here, I'm just going to make an instance object. So Redshift can use this. It will know what to do with it. You just want to switch it to full point instancing. And then inside I can get that sparkles. Oof. I want to go back to not the grid that we were testing on, but the main portion of them. This section there. So that what will be sparkling. Do I feel lonely? I mean, but California wasn't my home. I grew up in the Midwest or whatever, so I was already away from home there. Sometimes you just gotta switch it up. Try something new. So we have our instancer, Superbug. We have our instancer, and I'm just gonna make like a box here. This is gonna be our geometry that we like instance onto everything. Yeah, I don't mind the Portuguese beer too much. It's pretty good. I think I've really only had this Superbug. I don't think I really had the Sagres or the it's like Imperial or something is another one. Vegan nuts. Good to see you. But yeah, I mean, I was never super into like micro brews or stuff. I would just drink like Bud Light in America, so I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to beer. Superbug is what man drink. Sorry, it's water. So we have the box, and we have, this is going to be our instancing object. Put it like that. We see them in the viewport now. So we can turn off the display of this box. We can just turn off the other stuff. And I'm just going to pin the view here for a second. If we go into the box here, we can actually adjust some axes. So this way we should be able to see our orientation and stuff a little bit better as it spins. It looks more like a flake. We might want to just do some basic deformation here. So you just do this. I think someone in the Discord was doing something similar after last stream. But if you just do a kind of low res grid, jitter it up a little bit, this will just catch just break up the specular highlights or whatever a little bit more. If you want to do advanced stuff, you can like do maybe a bevel. Just so you won't get like super hard reflections. So this way you kind of like get rid of that faceting or whatever. I usually do the normal, but if you switch it to face area, that's like should be somewhat accurate, I think. So this way you get like some rounding and some sharpness. Pretty basic. So those are going to be the sparkles. Call them flakes. And this is the flake. And then we can turn everything back on and just get our, maybe we have a flake shader. Just with a higher reflectivity IOR and maybe a smoother roughness. I don't know, not that much diffuse. That should be good. We can put the material here on. Something like that. And I think that's everything. Let's just turn that off for a second. So yeah, our flakes are working. If we want to do here, maybe another randomize on the P scale. Ooh. Do a ramp. The ramp's usually the best one to do because you can like art direct. I find it the easiest to fit the range and art direct like the amounts and everything like that. Yeah, if you guys do any Houdini streams, let me know. We can set up a little raid host situation. We can bot the side effects streams. Maybe just reduce everything. So our sparkles are still smaller overall. That could be cool. If you want the sparkles maybe to be a little bit brighter, you could do like, I'm just gonna set up a specific light just for them. So this is gonna be an area grid light. We'll just have, probably don't need shadows, and we'll just have flake. So that's the only thing that this light will be touching. We'll put the light maybe just somewhere like that. So you have a glancing angle light that should just be getting these sparkles. Or you'd make it maybe over the top just to double check it's working. I don't know if that should be okay. Let's try turning these off. The rotation wasn't because you did not normalize. Ah, I see what you mean. Yeah, so it was, that's why I was speeding up and slowing down. I thought that function would only get points on a surface of a sphere. But I think there's another one that's like sample sphere surface or something like that. I think these points might be inside of the sphere, so they weren't normalized. So yeah, I'm just double checking now. I think I turned off these other lights. Maybe we don't do it that way, and we'll just call this the flake light. It's possible you need to set it up like this, maybe? Okay. So yeah, instead of the instancer, I think Redshift's a little confused by it or whatever. But this way we can dial in these highlights a little bit. You can kind of art direct them separately than everything else. You can switch the spread here if you want like a specific beam kind of cutting across everything. That could be cool. So we can really just dial in where this flake reflections are gonna pop in at or whatever. So we'll just have a bit of like vignette or something. Instance SOP level prims. Yeah, that's an option for sure. Using packed primitives. Sometimes I use this, like if I know I'm just going to be using one shape. It's a little bit cumbersome to set up, but I feel like Redshift might be Redshift like under the hood is a little bit quicker to start up renders when you're instancing this way, even though it's more cumbersome to set up. I haven't done a ton of testing though, extensively. It's closer to a superstition than a proven test result on my end though. So we should have the flakes. I think we have everything in here now. We could do maybe some quick photographic controls and things like that happening. If you're going to be adding these, it's definitely good to get them in earlier so you're like, they're not rapidly adjusting the look of everything at the end. Like, it's good to work with them enabled so you can make the creative decisions you need, taking that into account. So do a little bit of something like that. Sometimes I'll do this flare, like I don't have any moving stuff, but I think having that in, just like subtle, can kind of help a little bit of like photographic things. It depends what I'm doing. If I'm compositing stuff, you can do EXRs. If you're using ASYS, it gets a little bit, it's like an extra step because you eventually have to bake that transform in. So if I'm just posting things directly to the internet, I'll just do JPEGs and I'll just set the Redshift thing to apply my color settings to the JPEG. I think sometimes I'll get, I don't know how easy I can do it here, but sometimes you can get that halo falling like in the corner of your screen. I don't know. I don't think it's super worthwhile. I might just turn it off for right now. So yeah, I think if depending on what you're doing, if you just want to work quickly, you can just do JPEGs. But if it's something for a studio or a pipeline that you need to reuse and like iterate on, EXRs are probably better because you'll have more flexibility to do like color corrections and stuff. The settings in Houdini. So if you get your Redshift node, maybe I just have to go to the network. Just do a new thing up here. So I usually do output, post, just check, get all the boxes checked, and then if your mplay preview gamma, you just want to set it to 1 as well, I think, if you're going to be using mplay to preview things. And then you just, of course, need to set this to whatever you're doing. So that's usually all that I change. So I'm going to punch in the camera, I think, a little bit. Something like that, maybe. I think I just have too much empty edges or whatever. So that should fill the frame out a little bit better. And I might still have too many particles here. I'm gonna get rid of them like that. Triple X vibes, how's it going? And I might increase maybe these flakes. Just 22,000 to go up to like 500,000. And let's just see what we get. I think we have too many. Let's try something around 100,000. It's feeling a little bit better. We might just be too bright overall. Yeah, I mean, it's probably better to have too many particles than too little. Because you can always take them away, but like, I don't know, instead of worrying about resimulating with more of them or whatever. I'll just make this flake light maybe a little bit smaller. I think the ambient lights as well. Keep those down. The sim was pretty quick. I think it was 10 or 15 minutes. I might still have it in my, I don't think I do. I had to restart Houdini. Yeah, the Solaris stuff I've been playing around with it a little bit. I might do some stuff with it later on, but for right now, I'm just sticking with Redshift. Is there visualizing a vector? Yeah, I mean, with the sample sphere uniform stuff, like all of those functions, I usually just use the project files for sale. There's a Patreon account, or if you subscribe to my Twitch, you get a link, or you'll be able to access them using a Discord server. But all of these scenes I'm working on now, I usually just share them here. Like you'll see it show up in the chat in a second. Ramafu, thank you for the Prime. Yeah, so if you just do !Discord in the chat, you'll get an invite, and then if you link your Twitch to your Discord account, then you can access these scene files here. I also have a Patreon account. It's just the same content, but if you prefer to use Patreon over Twitch, or Amazon, or whatever, you can do that as well. So we'll just do a generate, not a hair generate, point generate. And then doing this is usually the easiest way I have to visualize these. So if you just get the point position, like that. So yeah, this is what I was saying, as I forgot that this was actually generating things inside of the sphere. So I think if you do sphere shell, that was the one that I was thinking about. I usually just do a random number here because this will adapt to like vector 2 or whatever data type that's looking for. It should. Oh, it's looking for a vector and a float. I don't know if I use this. Maybe just sample direction. Yeah, it's the same content. Basically, whether you subscribe using Twitch or Discord or I'm sorry, Twitch or Patreon, or I'm typing in the wrong things everywhere here. All right. So that's what I usually do to get the surface of a sphere. So yeah, it's the same. Everyone has access to the same content. It's just up to people where they prefer to subscribe at. All right, I'm gonna try to get this looking better. I think I'm not that happy with it right now. Let's try. We'll turn off that for a second. Thank you, Lambros. Yeah, so if you just make sure you link, if you Google how to link it or whatever, short tutorials for YouTube. Yeah, so on that bonus thing, there is YouTube tutorials, and I have done some just free ones as well. I think this will give you the YouTube. So there's VODs and tutorials there. I don't know what I did with this light. Maybe moving it forward again is a better idea. Headband. Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back. M. Suez, thank you for the bits. So yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to get some better lighting and stuff happening here, but it's let's get the particles a little bit smaller. Let's get more of them, twice as many of them or something. Maybe these ambient ones, we just need them closer to the camera. So you can still see a little bit of the shapes. Something like that, maybe. Yeah, I don't know, it might be my focal plane. The F distance is a little bit messed up. Let's adjust these flakes as well. Maybe my IOR was a little bit aggressive. Maybe we'll make them smaller as well. That seems a little bit better there. Yeah, I don't know this main light, maybe it's better if I put it back, just moving it further back in the scene. They were teaching Houdini at the school I went to, but it wasn't, I think it was like an independent study or something like that. It was like in the days of Houdini 12 or Houdini 11, so not that many colleges were teaching it or were using it at the time. You say wow, but there were people then that had been using it since like 7 or 6, and I was like, whoa, I guess I'm just the boomer now. So this might just be too saturated. And then, I don't know, maybe we want to move it up or down or something like that. Just to get a little bit of something more interesting happening. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that rendering and lighting is cool, but I feel like I've never been that. I think I need to practice at it a lot more. I've always just nerd out too much in the geometry generation manipulation portion of things. So we could always composite this sphere back on. I think that's kind of what they ended up doing in the reference there. And then maybe our ambience, just kick them way back. So we could try something like this. CG Nico, good to see you again. Maybe put some more particles in. I'm doing all right. I don't know. Trying to get this. It's a little bit of a weird area right now. Maybe I'm like deviating too much from that reference, or I don't know. This seems a little bit more interesting with that negative space. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing good. Studio Not War, thanks for stopping by. Let's just make these smaller. Add more of those flakes. Here we are in the tweak zone. So I think we're kind of getting somewhere. Just make this light behind everything bigger again, maybe. Ooh. Let's get rid of this flare for right now. We can see what happens maybe if we disable these mesh light association. Could be a little bit too much. PC is burning. Yeah, it's basically I just have one GPU right now, and then OBS is using it for the encoding. I'm waiting. I have to buy more power supply, like adapter plugs, to put my other GPU in, and then you can do the Redshift plugin options, and you can set it to just run on one GPU while you're streaming or whatever, and I won't turn into the 2 FPS NPC player. Alright, so I just want to keep making these smaller a little bit, I think. I think we have nice stuff happening here, but it's a balance of getting negative space and letting these lights scatter into the stuff more to get more kind of emissive geometry. Something like this maybe is a little bit better. A8000 better than 2 Lynx 3090s? I think there's benchmarks you can look up for that kind of information, but I think stuff is starting to look a little bit better. I think we might just want to add the colors into the reflections now. Yeah, the negative space is definitely a balance, but getting like this kind of scattering or like the gaseous softness, like it's definitely a balance of nice silhouettes, but also to feel like the depth, but also it was I think too contrasty earlier. All right, so you guys want to grab this scene? You can get the link. So yeah, the Redshift, like one company was doing pretty good Redshift render benchmarks. I forget the name of them. But if you search like the GPU you're interested in, you can usually find a comparison with all of this. So I don't know how much Redshift takes advantage of the linking with 2 of them. Does this one have the A? Maybe they don't have it. There's definitely one website that was definitely benchmark. It might have been this website here. That I think they build computers as well. But yeah, if you spend enough time searching for it, you should be able to find. You can kind of compare these things as just how long it's going to take to render a scene, and then that's how much time you're going to save or spend or waste or whatever. All right. So you can get this file if you want to see where I am now. I'm just going to go in and wrap things up quickly in the SOP network. So we'll get these particles that are flakes or sparkles here. And I'm going to do some of the texturing, coloring stuff that we were setting up before. So we can get maybe a little bit of maybe a little bit of these color variations using it. So put it maybe up here. Thank you, Nick. It's it's getting close. I don't know if it's optimal yet. So I set this up earlier in the stream, but we're basically using attributes from our particle simulation to texture or to make a color ramp here that we're going to use to tint these sparkles. So let's just turn off the other elements again and just keep the flakes, and we'll try and just make sure this works. Get the color, and this is going to be the reflection color. Let's see if we pull it in. We could actually check maybe just doing it, bypassing the shader fully. It looks like it's not working. So I might need to assign this shader here. I think that's working now. You can turn off some of this business if you want to double check. I don't know what this is. What did you clip? This one? So that's subscriber content for, it's on my Patreon or it's on the Discord if you're a subscriber and you link your Twitch subscription to the Discord, you would see it. All right. So now we're getting the colors. And I think I was actually messing up and I wasn't really, my shader wasn't getting applied earlier, and that was messing some things up. I had applied this shader to the instance object, but I think you need to actually assign it to the thing being instanced to get it to work. So I'm just trying some different specular like roughnesses. Maybe we would have put it in the diffuse. You might get a more interesting look here. I don't know, maybe for these flakes, if we do if we remove them from this orb light, might be a little easier to manage everything. And I'm just gonna go in and tweak these colors a little bit more. I think we have like way too much of this oversaturated red happening there. Try to get the magical rainbow. Yeah, I think there's some more render elements like flares and stuff like that that could give you more of a rainbow look and everything. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ways you can instance points in Redshift. This is a little bit kind of counterintuitive, but to me, I haven't checked recently, but it seems pretty optimized for Redshift. Like when you actually click the button, it seems like it's the quickest to build the scene that way. But I haven't benchmarked it or done anything recently to double check that. So that information might be outdated. They did some work in the most recent release that was the 3.5 one or whatever, 3.5.01, and I think they were adjusting that instance attribute, and it might be quicker, but for a while it was set up where it was like, it would say extracting objects and it would take a long time or it would use up a lot of memory or something like that. So I was just in the habit of setting things up this way. So I'm not seeing the flakes as much. I think with the shader assignment that I was messing up, I can make them bigger now to compensate. And then they should be a little bit more prevalent up here. The string attributes was interesting. I have some plans to try it out, but I haven't used it yet. But yeah, there was some another Patreon thing I was going to do, like soft bodies, that there was a lot of Cinema 4D people have been doing this kind of effect. So this should be... But yeah, so I had this idea here of like these shapes expanding, and then where you see these different colors, I was going to try a different texture, like fabric map string attribute. And I thought that was going to be a cool way to test that option with Redshift, to get different fabrics on different faces of those shapes, and it would look kind of like you sewed, maybe kind of like you sewed some stuff together. Could be cool. But yeah, I saw some people doing this type of effect with, I think it was, they were all doing it with Cinema, so I wanted to try it to see how you could do it with Vellum. So we're getting the twinkles and things now, but it might just be a little too oversaturated. Uber texture, OSL, I'm not sure. The OSL stuff with Redshift definitely seems a little, I think overall I'm just too saturated here. The OSL stuff, I might just go back to another, let's get closer to the rainbow. The OSL stuff with Redshift seems a little kind of buggy or whatever. I think just overall, like, OSL is still like being implemented or tweaked. You have to use an OSL node. Yeah, I haven't tried that part of it, but if that's the case, I guess I will have to use OSL and maybe crash my scene as well. All right, maybe this is. Yeah, the Redshift, their bump and like displacement stuff has never been that great. I don't know, to me it seems like maybe Arnold has the best OSL like implementation, but it's just not as fast maybe. So I'm basically generating this color palette somewhat procedurally. I'm just trying out a few. I'm using like a noise function to sample that ramp, so I'm just trying some different settings there. Seems like we're still too saturated. If you want, you can just do a color correction right here instead of going in and doing all your sliders. Just do this, drop it down. I think like, because I'm doing the ASIS LUT, and then my colors are being assigned in like a non-ASIS thing. And that might be contributing to it. Let's do that. I'm gonna adjust these flakes and ambient lights as well. But the green's working. I think just the ambient and the flake like intensity or amount is all we need to dial in at this point. So let's see which ambient we have here. Looks like we have the bottom right. I'm gonna pull it forward. Maybe boost it. And then could reduce the saturation. Maybe the intensity. I'm just trying to get these to be like very close to background, very subtle elements or whatever. Let's maybe turn off the extra features as we dial this stuff in. Let's get the other ambient light. Gonna move it up. Just seemed a little too, those ones just seemed before a little too like hot in the corners there. It might have been like distracting for people's eyes to see like bright stuff pulling in there. So yeah, and then I think just these flakes, they're either too big or too many. Let's go somewhere close to half. And less of them. So hopefully this will just give us maybe more of a glimmer of that stuff and not wonk our resolution, our overall like, just seemed too many colors before. Just kind of want a subtle look of those. I am going to try to get this red getting more saturated, because I think if anything that was definitely one thing I was noticing with this. So there's just more vibrant red like that. Yeah, we could switch maybe to the bucketed render mode. See what we get here. Thank you, Carl. It's yeah, I don't know, it's better aspirations maybe. I'm a little I don't know. I think I maybe I need to add like a background kind of matte thing happening or something like that. Like how everything's going to black right now might be a little bit I don't know, it definitely just looks a little unrefined or like unfinished or whatever, having like that black stuff. You can always do the bloom things and kind of save it, like get it looking a little bit more interesting. Just that kind of ambient, like additive colors on top can help a little bit. Maybe we want to go to a later frame. We have some more particles. One thing you can play around with, I didn't do this. I try to get as much shape as I can in the actual simulation, but you can always add like a twist modifier. Just set it to the proper axis. Maybe turn that off so we deform in every direction. You could do maybe like boost the vortex amount here with it. You can even like unspin everything. But this is, you could play around with it. It's an interesting idea to, you can always add deformers after your particle simulation, but if you rely on them too much, you can kind of destroy the look or motion overall. So I might just turn that off, turn it down, or I'll just leave it in there in case people want to play with it. Maybe we'll try that. No, I don't know. I mean, maybe the depth of field I'm doing is too extreme. We can try that. Can always play around with this stuff gets a little bit wild, but there is the volumetric scattering. You can get maybe a little bit of stuff to fill in that area there. And make things feel like a little bit more gaseous or whatever. I think too much of it and you kind of, everything starts to separate, like it's very easy to muddy everything up too much with this this stuff going on. I don't know, I usually don't bother with it too much. You can kind of use it to like adjust the black point, if that makes sense. It's, I don't know, maybe a little bit more interesting to get some different variations in the black point there. And maybe we'll just have one more little play around or adjustment with this orb light. So we could move it back even more to get like kind of more contrast and more negative space, so you can move it up and you can get more of a bright, hot, like focal point in the middle of the screen. Maybe the bloom, it's just over the top right now. Turn that down. Carl, thank you for the tier 1 subscription. I appreciate it. Just learning Houdini. Wondering if Houdini people would even mess with RS noise volume. Yeah, I haven't done too much playing around with the RS procedural noise volumes. Like last I checked, you couldn't really add that much noise at render time. I was always using just VDB and baking the noise in SOPs and then doing it that way. But they might have updated stuff more recently that would make that you have the capability to do more things procedurally. So I'm just going to change these settings so you can get like a preview render more quickly. We'll just do progressive and we'll turn up that. We'll just try to bash out a quick one. You could also do maybe a lot less reflections. Like everything right now is reflectives, so we definitely don't need that many of it. And then this should do a progressive render. Or at least it should be a little bit quicker. Yeah, I think you can get away with a lot lower settings for what we're doing here. Maybe even this GI trace depth can reduce that. I'm just going to go up a lot higher here with our sampling threshold. And then we should be rendering a lot faster. So yeah, it's not perfect. I think overall my stuff might just be too small. My particles might be too small, like it's almost a situation where we have too much detail. But it's definitely an interesting result. It's pretty cool. So I'll just do one last tweak here. I'm going to make the flakes bigger. So we'll adjust the ramp to be a more distribution for the bigger ones and just increase the global scale a little bit. And probably going to wrap up the YouTube recording portion of this. I think with these bigger flakes now we're getting better perception of these color variations and stuff like that we put in there. With our procedural noise, procedural texturing or whatever. So yeah, I think for right now, I don't know, I mean, if anything, I would start to do like some of these adjustments, the kind of final post things. Maybe our green is too much green. You can always do the color curve here. This one can give you some nice like fine grain control over everything. If you're really trying to match reference, like using those sliders and stuff, you can dial things in a lot more quickly that way. If anything, I think our ambient stuff is still too high. So I just brought those down a lot. And I don't know, I mean, the depth of field stuff, you can try something with it way back. Maybe we want to move our orb here to be closer into the focal range. Oof, it's a little too big. So I think that's somewhat interesting. I think our saturation's a little too high. Something like that could be pretty cool. So I'll leave it right here for the YouTube recording.